Thanks to COVID, many parents are considering taking their kids out of public schools permanently. To the surprise of no one, public schools are trying to block parents from removing their kids permanently. What part of the word public don't they understand? And just when did so-called public schools become sites of mandatory incarceration? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're discussing the desperation of public school oligarchs. They gotta have your money and they gotta have your control, as some have already begun blocking parents from withdrawing their children. This, as concern grows that public school budgets will be impacted with more families choosing private and homeschool options. And that's exactly right, Katie. It's not about education. Education is nowhere to be found in this. If you lose those kids, you get less money from the state and the feds. And if you lose those kids, you have no ability to control them. You can't feed them your TBQ propaganda. You can't beat them over the head with global warming. You can't teach them about all sorts of alternative sexual positions and behaviors in kindergarten, and that's what drives them absolutely crazy. And it shows you to the degree to which, and the unions are involved in this too, it shows you the degree to which that to the vast majority of our American apparatus, our American public school administration and apparatus, it's just a money-making scheme. It has nothing to do. They're basically holding you hostage for mandatory attendance in public school if your kids aren't privately educated, to get money and perks so they can give lavish retirements to their public school teachers. They can pay huge sops to the unions. And all throughout all of this, no one's learning anything. And that's the other than doctrinaire progressive values. That's the way that's the way they roll.
It is the way they roll. And we're finding now that TJ Schmidt, who's a lawyer for the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, the HSLDA, and if you haven't heard of this organization, if you're at all considering possibly homeschooling or you want to learn more about this, look into the Homeschool Legal Defense Association because they can help you to understand what's happening. Well, TJ Schmidt's a lawyer for them, and he provides legal services to help these parents meet requirements when they want to pull their children out of public school and how that whole process works. Well, TJ says that he's actually noticed an uptick of parents who are trying to pull their kids from school, and the schools are kind of basically saying, nope, can't do that right now. And he's not quite sure if they're trying to, if it's just they don't have enough people to help out, or if there is some sort of, vindictiveness happening. As a
11-year public homeschool program, FreedomProject Academy. We've been dealing with this for years. This isn't new. It's not COVID. It's not only COVID related. We go back to the earliest years we were starting this. We had parents, we had principals and teachers and superintendents of schools flat out lying to parents, telling, oh, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. In this state, you're not allowed to do that. What gets me a little bit is some of the states where it's happening. You would expect this happening in California. You would expect this kind of thing happening in Massachusetts. And it may be, but some of the states that are listed here, right? Northern Virginia, Oregon, Oklahoma, and California is listed, and Florida. Apparently, Florida, which is a state that has historically been incredibly open-minded about homeschooling, that has Republican establishment governors that all of a sudden is local school districts are trying to strong-arm kids into staying in the public schools for financial reasons. It's odd.
Well, and he even says, the most egregious situations I've had have been in Florida. And he said, like you said, it's normally a great state to homeschool. He says, but I've had numerous parents in a couple of different counties who were told we're not allowed to withdraw students right now. And basically saying that these school districts are trying to hold on to their students because they know that third Friday count in September is the all coveted number. They just sit and wait, feasting for it, because that's what determines how much money they're going to get.
Right. You use every tool at your resource, including a gun to the head, to keep your kids in school through that third week of the semester. Then after that, it doesn't really matter if they all leave, right?
Everyone leaves.
It's unbelievable. And so notice what they're trying to do. They're trying to, when they say we can't right now process your kid leaving public schools. What does it take what exactly does it take for your kids to leave public school? Just don't go.
Apparently,
Literally, quite literally, you have the right to alternatively educate your kid. You don't have to do anything other than just not come. You don't even necessarily need to give them a courtesy call if you don't want to. As long as your kid is duly homeschooled or enrolled in a private school, just don't send them. But what the schools are doing now is they're using COVID as an excuse, right? We can't process your kids now. Mm-hmm. What they're trying to tell your parents is, we're not going to let you do this until school starts because it's going to be oh so tempting, right? If you're not allowed to formally pull out until school starts, that means that it's going to be almost impossible at that time to find a school, number one, and number two. And it also means you're going to be so tantalized by the idea of sending your kids out of the house for 8 hours a day that if they can just limp through a little bit longer, by attrition, you're going to keep your kids in public schools. And if your attitude is, by attrition, I'm going to leave my kids in politicized, failed, completely inappropriate public schools, well, then you probably deserve the kind of kids they're going to grow up to be. But you don't have to listen to these bureaucrats. You know what I'd love to say to these school superintendents is, I'm not asking your permission. I'm doing you the courtesy of telling you, which no longer am I going to do. You will not see my kids in the fall. And if you got a problem with that, take it up with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Right. And one of the things Schmidt says is that there are two main reasons for why they're being given. The school officials obviously are fearful of losing too many students to homeschooling. Translated, we missed the da-da-da.
What do they miss?
And the
right?
second reason is perhaps a staffing issue, just a lacking staffing issue to process these withdrawals. Okay, but that's exactly the point. So you want to send your kid to a school that doesn't have adequate staffing for your own child? Well, you're doing them a courtesy by having your child stay home, get actual education, and then they don't have to worry about taking care of so many kids.
I still am puzzled by this whole idea of processing my leaving.
Paperwork.
What does that mean?
Paper trail. They have to have paper trail for
Okay, so you basically
everything.
submit the name of the kid who's not coming back, and then what?
This isn't 1910. You have to give a blood sample.
Oh, yes.
You have to do
DNA. They got to swab a
everything.
cheek.
You got to make sure
rectal
all of that.
probing. Yes,
it's all of that
to make sure that this is a valid thing that
That's
you're doing.
why.
And it just smacks of desperate. And look, I could be sympathetic to the public schools if they were really concerned. We were just so excited about teaching your kids math. We're doing logarithms. Logarithms. Is it logarithm a thing?
Yeah.
Algorithms. We're doing algorithms.
Logarithms is a thing.
If your kid's not coming, we're gonna not be able to teach them. We're doing well, they don't do long division anywore, right?
Anyway.
But I could get it if we're gonna read Moby Dick. We're gonna read no. That's not why they're eager to have your kid, right? It's that some teacher union bureaucrat has more money to throw at left-wing political causes in the next election. That's what it's all about.
On to the next story, which involves a BB gun. So a Baltimore County mother named Courtney Lancaster is now warning parents after police were called to her house because of something that happened during a virtual school lesson with her son, her 11-year-old son, who is a Boy Scout, by the way, in his 5th grade class for Seneca Elementary School. Basically, her son's BB guns were in view, so now the cops had to show up to her.
So this is egregious.
Yes.
So not only this is why I go back to the first story. This is why they can't let go of you. There's the money, and then there's stuff like this. So your kid, because of COVID, is online doing his lessons from his bedroom. And over the shoulder, he's got his airsoft guns, right? He's got I'm surprised it wasn't squirt guns. Got an airsoft gun hanging on the wall. And some stooge, some complete narc stooge from the public schools is watching this, right? And sees the gun and calls the principal, who promptly calls the police, who promptly, they won't show up to Chaz in Seattle to help people being held hostage, but they'll show up at your we're coming to your city if you got an airsoft gun in the background. They won't disarm the looting, rioting morons of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They won't do that, but heaven help you if your kid's got a toy gun over his shoulder. And the mom's mistake was letting them in. She said, I let them in because I don't blame her, but she should have said to him, no, right? Said to those police officers, they had no right to come in, and I guarantee you they didn't have a warrant.
All right, here you go. Watch what happened.
Courtney says on June 1st, her son was in a Google Meet class in his room, where he keeps his collection of BB and airsoft guns on the wall. A screenshot was taken and sent to the principal. Police were called to search the family's home. When officers showed up at the door, Lancaster allowed them inside.
I thought this is outrageous. This is despicable. I had no idea what in the world could this be over? BB guns never even once entered my mind.
Courtney says the principal later told her bringing a weapon to a virtual class was the same as bringing a gun to school.
So the principal, this is why you don't send your kids to public schools. This is not only can they not educate your kids, they're not educated themselves. This is a serious statement from a principal of a school that bringing an actual gun with bullets and stuff into a classroom is the exact same thing as having a airsoft gun in your own personal bedroom that just happens to be in the view of some bureaucrat who's monitoring. And if you're monitoring these videos so close, if these kids who are getting online and you're actually taking the time to monitor and scan all the surroundings, I mean, what else are you looking for? What other things are you invasively reporting or noting about kids?
Well, and for as much as these schools talk about their social emotional learning and understanding your kid, knowing who your kid is, they should have known that her son was trying to get his Eagle Scout, okay? Because he was a Boy Scout, so he's trying to get his Eagle Scout, and he learned how to shoot a BB gun and an airsoft gun as part of that. He's taken 3 levels of archery lessons, and he stores his guns on the back wall. To note also, Courtney is a Navy veteran who had 4 years of active duty. She knows how to handle guns. She's taught her son how to handle them properly. So if the school knew anything about that, they could understand why maybe the boy actually had these BB guns.
I don't think they would. That's
what I'm saying.
You're saying logically,
yeah,
but I guarantee you, if they knew all that information, they would. That idiot principal would say the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It doesn't matter if your mother was a Marine. The fact is, having a toy gun in your possession, even if we can't see it, is the same thing as bringing a real gun into a public school classroom. And can I just make this observation, whether you know it or not? The Second Amendment is already done. It's over unless you fix this. This is the attitude in all of our public schools to guns. They are training 60 million American youngsters to see the idea of a gun, the shadow of a gun, a toy gun, a fake gun, a Pop-Tart eaten into the shape of a gun, a little 5-year-old who goes pew, 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 pew. They're teaching your kids to see all of those things exactly the same as gun violence. And in about 15 years, when these kids start voting, they're going to vote away anything to do with guns because they've been brainwashed from the time they were children that any aspect of gun culture, again, a Pop-Tart we've seen chewed into the tank of a little kid going like this, somebody using a stick to point at somebody. This is zero tolerance nonsense. And when these kids are adults, on top of everything else they haven't been taught, about all the history they don't know, they will be so terrified that they will gleefully vote away your gun rights. It's coming. It's a done deal unless you intervene and get your kids out of these schools.
Well, Mom, Courtney wasn't done. Once the police came in, they were there for 20 minutes, found absolutely nothing wrong. She decided to exchange emails with the school administrator, and that screenshot was taken during the class, and she said, okay, can I see the screenshot? And they told her no, because it's not part of his record. So you can't even confront them to say, okay, show me the evidence or what's happening. What does that mean? What else are they taking photos of and holding?
What does not part of the record mean? If you're telling me the university isn't keeping a running trail of what they saw in that kids, if you're telling me that not the university, if you're telling me that the public school is not going to keep a record of that, that's a flat out lie.
Well, we're going to talk about another topic that's just not fun. But Real Clear Investigations is reporting that with the new era of the Trump administrator's expansion, basically, of the federal oversight to K-12 education, it includes now our youngest of pupils, as well as teachers, being able to get a lawyer or an advisor during any sexual misconduct investigation. So starting this next school year, an accused grade schooler, the accuser, and their parents will get to review each other's evidence, such as social media posts, texts, and photos, and they submit written responses for the opposing parties and questions for the witnesses.
On the one hand, I'm all about due process. On the one hand, I'm all about it, right? And we've seen the lack of due process. And just what we saw in the previous story about a mom and a young boy being worried about their criminal record because of some snooping busybody in a public school. The due process has to be taken care of here. The fact that we have to have due process for 5-year-olds, The fact that when a 5-year-old wants to hug his teacher, we actually have had teachers in the past who've considered that sexual harassment, right? When 2 little 5-year-olds hug each other, or one little 5-year-old reaches out to grab the hand of another one, now it's considered an actual violation. How childish, how utterly reprehensible, how demeaning to childhood itself is this kind of behavior in kindergarten and elementary schools. But that's what we have to deal with. And because we have to deal with, now you got the lawyers involved. Is there ever a situation where getting in lawyers involved with elementary school plaintiffs and defendants is a good thing? And what does it say about our country that we have to do it because of how completely out of control the public schools have become?
Well, and if you want to talk about how completely out of control, Boston College professor R. Shep Melnick, who's the author of a 2018 study on the evolution of Title IX, actually said this new rule will bring sweeping changes to the public schools. He said despite all the attention devoted to sexual harassment during the Obama years, until recently, the Office of Civil Rights devoted few resources to investigating complaints in elementary and secondary schools. Okay, public schools are on notice that the federal spotlight now shines on them. Complying with Title IX regulation has become more important than ever. And here's three factors that Melnick says that led to the education department to shift this attention now to the earlier grades, K-12. Its own data showing that nearly 10,000 students in elementary or secondary schools were the victim of assault, rape, or attempted rape, and this is during the 2015-2016 school year. So during one year, nearly 10,000 students. An investigation of Chicago schools that found pervasive sexual misconduct by teachers and students. That's point number 2. And the third thing is a new federal law barring schools from passing along employees with a sexual misconduct rap sheet to other school districts. So you put all this together, and finally the light is being shown down onto the K-12.
Which is also another point, right? You've got homeschool specialists at Harvard trying to argue that homeschooling is dangerous for your kids. I guarantee you there is not that kind of abuse going on in homeschool families, right? The average mom and dad who homeschool their kids does it out of love, not because they want to perv on their kids by keeping them locked in the room all day, their own bedrooms all day. But that's what's happening at public schools. And this raises another issue. The fact that it's now been deemed racist to enact discipline in the elementary, middle, and high schools. Now, again, thanks to Obama, right? Thanks to the chillingly pathetic and retrograde views of Barack Obama. Now, if you actually discipline kids, you're going to get in trouble because, according to Obama, discipline goes radically against black kids, and so therefore, because we're disciplining more black kids, we can't discipline any. This is right out of the Black Lives Playbook. You've got situations in classrooms where kids are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to other kids. What are you going to do? You can't even tell a kid to sit down and shut up. You can't even send a kid out of class to the principal's office if he's disruptive anymore. That would be disparate. Disparate impact in terms of how we discipline kids. So if you've got a third grader who's coming on strong sexually with a kindergartner, how do you handle that without violating the third grader's rights, right? That's where we are now. And all of this is because schools have jettisoned common sense and a genuine recognition that little kids aren't felons. So stop implying that everything they do that you don't like is felonious.
Well, and just so everyone's aware, these new rules are going into effect August 14th for all the colleges and K-12 schools, as well as those who are private schools and independent schools who participated in the Federal Small Business Administration Coronavirus Relief Program.
So in other words,
tie you in there.
If you take 1 penny from the state or the feds, you cannot be an independent school.
It's time for some real education. Near the hilltop villas of central Portugal lies the one-of-a-kind estate of Quinta de Regaleira. The estate is an eclectic mix of Gothic, Egyptian, Moorish, and Renaissance architecture. But what lies beneath the palace gardens is what sets the estate apart. A pair of wells called the Initiation Wells spiral deep down within the earth like inverted towers. The wells were never used to collect water. Instead, they were part of a mysterious initiation ritual within the Knights of Templar tradition.
So full disclosure, disclosure, Katie and I, neither one of us speak Portuguese. And so we've been trying desperately to figure out the Portuguese way to pronounce this.
I tried.
The Quinta, I'm not going to go there.
De
So
Regaleira.
even when we heard it pronounced, it was like, huh? So forgive our ignorance. This instant classic was actually recommended by one of our viewers. Also, his name is Angelo Stagnaro. So Angelo, thank you so much for recommending this. Neither Katie nor I had ever heard of this place before, and we certainly don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm going to call it the Quinta. And it is a remarkable facility, right? It's part of a UNESCO preserved site, and you have this one. There's really much more to it than just the towers itself. You get a sense there of the estate. The owner of the Quinta, the wealthy Portuguese businessman Antonio Augusto Carvalho Monteiro, was a well-known Freemason. With the assistance of the Italian architect Luigi Manini, he designed and constructed this 4-hectare property with enigmatic buildings, mysterious parks, underground tunnels. It's just like a kind of a fairy tale place. Kids would love to run around. All of the structures are erected in the Quinta. They're filled with symbols of the occult, symbols of Freemasonry, linked to alchemy, Rosicrucians, the Hermetic legacy, the Knights Templar even. What is it in the world today where every time you scratch a conspiracy theory, there's the Knights Templar? I mean, just amazing. And of course, tarot mysticism. And on the property is the initiation well. Show some of these wells. They're actually towers that, instead of being raised up and built to the sky, are actually delved deep into the earth. So they're reverse towers, so to speak. The initiation well, some people call them, they're entranceways to underground labyrinths. They are connected to other entrances via a series of underground walkways. The initiation well has a striking spiral staircase supported by carved columns that lead down to the bottom of the well, though through its 9 landings. It is believed that the spacing of these landings, as well as the number of steps in between, are linked to tarot mysticism and Masonic principles. At the bottom of the initiation wells is a compass cut over a Knights Templar cross, which is said to have been the coat of arms of Monteiro to his association with Rosicrucianism. The 9 small round landings, separated by 15 cents, also evoke, get this, literature lovers, Dante's Divine Comedy, the 9 levels, and may represent the 9 circles of hell because they are dug down, right? 9 sections of purgatory and the 9 skies of paradise, all of which is remarkably cool and literary. So thanks for recommending this. This is an instant classic indeed, and it's amazing how many things there are in the world that you'll never know exist.
And there you go. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Parler. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a nice little message on social media. Now we're going to wrap our day up with our fun fact of the day. The Daisy Red Ryder BB gun will turn 80 years old this year, and it's perhaps the most popular of all the BB guns. But you'll shoot your eye out.
I double dog dare you to put your tongue on the microphone. I triple dog dare you.
Well, if you triple dog dare me, then.
And that's going to do it for the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, stay educated, my friends.